So with Star Wars coming out this week, what I wanted to do here is have a discussion on the character of Kanan Jarrus. And what I'm hoping is that at the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of his character, as well as how he fits into the overarching theme of Star Wars as a whole. So Kanan Jarrus first appears in Star Wars Rebels episode number 1 in October of 2014, functioning as a leader of a group of rebels fighting against the Galactic Empire, Darth Vader, and Emperor Palpatine. As a show that took place 14 years after Episode 3, 5 years before Episode 4, and served to cover the fallout of Order 66 with the last surviving Jedi going into hiding, Rebels was met with good reviews from fans and critics alike. Within the first couple episodes, the stage was effectively set for the basis behind both Kanan as well as Ezra, the de facto star of the show, who was originally presented as an orphan with the potential to tap into the Force. Where the remainder of the series continued to focus on Kanan taking Ezra as a Padawan with the duo operating alongside the rest of the Ghost crew, and using guerrilla warfare tactics against the Empire. In April of 2015, as part of Disney's acquisition of the Star Wars rights and the expansion of its in-universe continuity under the banner of Journey to the Force Awakens, Kanan the Last Padawan was launched as an ongoing series, with Greg Weisman working as the writer. As a graduate of Stanford University with a bachelor's degree in English, Weisman had worked alongside writer Cary Bates on the Captain Atom series in DC Comics, where his other work came in the form of an unrealized miniseries starring Black Canary. His time in both the animated and comic book landscape also involved early conceptual designs for the Gargoyles cartoon show, the European cartoon show Witch, as well as Spectacular Spider-Man and Young Justice. As a result, when Disney took over the Star Wars series, Weisman was brought on board to help launch Kanan the Last Padawan, to expand on Kanan's backstory and operate as a counterpart to his appearances in Star Wars Rebels. Having said that, where issue number 1 followed the crew of the Ghost during one of their missions, the story also saw a series of flashbacks to 15 years prior during the events of the Clone Wars from Star Wars Episode 2. Taking place on a planet called Kaller, the story reveals that Kanan's actual name is Caleb Doom. During his time training under the Jedi, Kanan was taken as a Padawan by Master Depa Billaba, teaching him how to use the third form of lightsaber combat called Sarisu, or Way of the Mynock, which focuses heavily on defense rather than offense. The two had fought together, leading the forces of the Republic against General Cleave, operating as one of the leaders of the Separatist Confederacy of Independent Systems. Because Kanan and his master were strong in the Force and able to quite literally cut a swath through the Separatist army, General Cleave was forced to flee, with the Republic taking Kaller back under their control. And so following this victory, because the Battle of Kaller left little room for Depa to train Caleb adequately, the two took the evening to reconnect and ensure that he was maintaining his role alongside the path of the light side of the Force. Now this session between the two is of supreme importance, and the reason why is because it sets the stage for much of what happens in the remainder of the series going into Clone Wars. Where Depa asks Caleb to describe what he feels, where his initial response is that he has questions, the overall theme Depa is shooting for is what he feels within his heart. What we're told is that for Caleb, prior to becoming a Padawan in the Jedi Order, he had always felt akin to a leaf blowing in the wind, and that he had no true understanding of his destiny or any control of where his life was headed. Indeed, because the galaxy was so large with so many directions a person's life could take, Caleb's introduction to the Jedi Order gave him a way to view his destiny without the distraction of decisiveness. However, with his newly established feelings of purpose, Depa informs Caleb that he stands on the precipice of danger and that because he's both inexperienced and filled with emotion, he could potentially fall to the dark side of the Force. To sidetrack for a second, within the official Star Wars universe and the non-official Legends material, while the Jedi avoided strong emotions like love, hate, fear, and anger, less powerful emotions like the feeling that comes with a sense of belonging were viewed as an asset. Like a sidewalk with hedgerows on both sides, these feelings serve as a guide ensuring that the Jedi stay in tune with the light side of the Force. However, because the galaxy waxes and wanes with the changing times, Jedi have to learn to adapt, and as they continue their place within the Order, the feeling of purpose would eventually give way to the feeling of duty. But for someone like Caleb, who had never known what it meant to have a place in the cosmos, the fear of losing this feeling could lead him down the path of the dark side and eventual alignment with the Sith Empire. Something to also take note of here is that Caleb's master did not hold absolute adherence to the Jedi teachings despite being a member of the Jedi High Council. Now this in particular was not unheard of within the Star Wars universe. What I mean here is that not all Jedi turned into fallen Jedi and joined the Sith Empire when they disagreed with the teachings. Instead, where the Jedi as a whole believed in the light side of the Force and used it as a means to operate as peacekeepers, within their own ranks, there were varying beliefs in terms of what the Force was and how it related to the universe as a whole. While some maintained strict adherence to the living Force which flowed through all things and used it to focus on the moment, others maintained adherence to the cosmic Force and that through it, they could perceive the end result of their destiny and see the future. However, for Depa, her disagreement with the Jedi isn't based on her view of the Force, and instead is based on the idea that the Jedi moved themselves away from their role as a peacekeeping force, isolated from the galaxy's conflicts, and instead became part and parcel to the military, and that they assigned themselves ranks and operated accordingly. But for the soldiers who listened to the conversation between Depa and Caleb, Jedi involvement in the war and their adoption of military ranks was as much a moral rallying call as it was a method of organization, and that the Separatist army was highly organized and had mobilized to present a threat on all fronts, while the forces of the Galactic Republic were largely composed of soldiers cloned in the image of a highly capable soldier, but designed to take orders with no room for self-governance. As such, the wisdom of the Jedi was necessary to ensure a successful campaign, lest the Republic be doomed to failure and eventual defeat. Furthermore, where most Jedi continued their following of the Jedi ideologies, Caleb's desire for answers to questions that plagued his curiosity regarding why the Jedi followed the rules they did was what caused Depa to take him on as an apprentice. While this didn't mean that she intended to sow the seeds of dissent and orchestrate his defection from the Jedi ranks, it did mean that to her, Caleb was a more open mind, and that where he believed in the Jedi way, he also recognized that blindly following the path of their teachings would not allow them to adapt to the changing times. And so providing him with a holocron, the information contained within would allow Caleb to receive the answers to his questions without openly asking them aloud, and leading other Jedi to believe that he harbored the potential to fall to the dark side. However, in the midst of Caleb's instruction by Depa, Order 66 is implemented by Emperor Palpatine, which entails eliminating the Jedi who have been deemed a threat to the Republic. Again, while this was simply part of Palpatine's plan to eliminate all opposition to his ascension as ruler of the galaxy, the fact remains that the clones surrounding Depa and Caleb turn on them, inciting a battle between the two groups. Now this scene as it's depicted here is very important because what it tells us is that Order 66 wasn't a simple matter of the clones turning on the Jedi and the Jedi killing them in turn. Instead, the Jedi considered many of these soldiers to be their friends in that they had forged themselves in the fires of battle, fought alongside one another, and saved each other's lives on several occasions. But with Order 66, while the clones were able to immediately cast this sentiment aside, the Jedi weren't. And in this particular instance, Caleb finds himself frozen and torn between his loyalty to his friends and his loyalty to the Jedi. On the other hand, for Depa, the situation is a simple matter of fight or flight, and in this instance, she's chosen to fight. Taking up her lightsaber against the clones, she's able to clear Caleb from the moment, who in turn chooses his allegiance and alongside his master, attacks the clones. Now during the fight, Depa comes to the realization that because the clones had referenced Order 66 prior to attacking them, this can't be an isolated incident since they're designed to simply follow orders. As such, if these clones have turned against them, it stands to reason that the rest of the clones have turned against the Jedi as well. And so ordering Caleb to run with the promise that she'll follow behind him, where he knows that she's lying, he does as he's instructed and retreats. However, after making his way to the top of a hill, it's revealed that like the remaining Jedi, Depa has died at the hands of the clones. Now following this, would the remaining 3 issues go on to establish the basis behind how it was Caleb met the rest of the crew from Rebels and undertook the name Kanan? Because these first few comics were so successful in that they consistently broke the top 30 sales list each month, with issues number 7 and number 8 in November and December of 2015, Weissman came back and provided the backstory behind how it was that Kanan met Depa in addition to his training during the early days of the Clone Wars. Picking up in Coruscant with the younglings under the tutelage of Master Yoda, the events take place one day before the Initiate Trials. To sidetrack for a second, within Star Wars, potential Jedi are usually only taken at a young age before their minds have the chance to learn emotions and the complexity that comes with them. During this time, the potential recruits receive their instruction in groups, and only after passing the trials were they granted the role of Padawan and apprenticed to a Jedi Master. Now because neither Disney nor Marvel have released any information regarding the Jedi trials within the new continuity, we're going to have to reference the old continuity to at least give us some idea of what they mean. The trials of the Jedi Order actually come in 3 tests. The first was to memorize and recite the Code of the Jedi, and where there have been several variations over the years, the most popular states that there is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there's serenity. There's no chaos, there's harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. Now the second test varied over the years, and where some of the expanded universe and film universe content like Knights of the Old Republic or Return of the Jedi established the second test as being the construction of a lightsaber, other sources like Jedi Path Manual for Students of the Force required a demonstration in competency simply using a lightsaber. Following this, the Jedi hopeful would undergo the third task, which ranged anywhere from helping a fallen Jedi return to the light side to demonstrating their connection to the Force. But once a Jedi completed the trials, they would go on to choose the path of a Jedi Consular, a Jedi Guardian, or a Jedi Sentinel, during which time they would be apprenticed to a Jedi Master of the same class. Now to be clear, not all Jedi recruits would be chosen to become Padawans. Instead, if for some reason they were selected due to not being powerful enough in the Force or because they failed the trials, most Jedi would go on and join the Service Corps under one of 4 branches composed of agriculture, medical, educational, and exploration. Now if you're interested in learning more about the Jedi as a whole, I'll have a video about that on Rob Explains, but within the context of this story, the problem that Caleb faces is that in addition to his constant need to question, he also lacks focus. As a result, during the sparring session between himself and the other younglings, he's injured with Master Yoda sending him to the infirmary. Now after his arrival, the destiny of Caleb comes to fruition in that the intention of Yoda didn't seem to be for Caleb to actually receive any treatment, but instead to discover the recovering body of Depa. Where I wouldn't say that this was ever confirmed, in the Star Wars universe, because Yoda is so powerful, very rarely does he ever act without having some measure of the outcome or at least some kind of plan in terms of how he would like for things to turn out. To this end, when Caleb first encounters Depa Billaba, the 2 scene of form was referred to as a Force bond. Again, this isn't confirmed, but the reaction of Caleb seems to fit the hallmark of a Force bond. What I mean here is that when this occurs, the Force presents itself as a special connection between 2 individuals that doesn't represent love so much as it establishes a bridge between their very essence, allowing for a kinship of sorts that no one else shares. However, shortly after his arrival, he's probably kicked out by the medical droid and told only to return if he suffered a mortal injury. Now to focus on Depa for a second, her isolation within the medical bay comes by way of her battle against General Grievous and the Separatist droid army. While we're not given much information regarding the nature of this conflict or exactly how it unfolded, what we do know is that during the battle, Depa had suffered intense injuries, leading to her falling into a coma where she was brought to the Jedi Temple for recovery. And so after awakening, she's met with the arrival of Masters Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Mace Windu. Now something I'd like you to notice here is that unlike the other Masters, Depa is far more cavalier regarding her attitude and overall demeanor, and that rather than being serious, she has a bit more sarcasm about her, something Yoda, Mace, and Obi-Wan don't fully value. At the same time, however, the question lingers as to the toll that the battle and the subsequent coma has had on Depa. To this end, the intention of Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Mace is to effectively test the physical, mental, emotional, and fitness aspects of Depa to ensure that she has made a full recovery. And so picking back up with Caleb, we join a lesson with the Jedi Chronicler, who's been expanding the basis behind how the Jedi are selected as Padawans once they complete the trials. Furthermore, when we had discussed Depa's reasoning behind choosing Caleb as her Padawan, she has stated that it was born from his constant questioning of why the Jedi follow their traditions. Now an important distinction to make here is the difference between asking why the Jedi follow their traditions and questioning the actions of the Jedi themselves through dissent. For Caleb, he believes in the Jedi teachings and his questioning is simply the byproduct of his curiosity. But because the other members of his class who have passed the trials don't share his same curiosity, they view Caleb as an outlier rather than a genuine Jedi hopeful. In addition to this, the view that Caleb's classmates hold of him is compounded on during a discussion between the 3 when he states that in addition to his hope of being selected by Depa, he also hopes to have the opportunity to fight during the Clone Wars. The reason why this is important is that if you recall Yoda's explanation of the Jedi to Luke Skywalker during The Empire Strikes Back, he had stated that the Jedi do not seek out adventure or excitement and instead use their power in a defensive manner to meditate and keep the peace. However, Caleb's continued curiosity about Depa is also expanded on when he learns from his fellow classmates that after her experience in losing so many soldiers in her battle against Grievous coupled with falling into a coma, many of the clones have labeled her as damaged goods and as such view her as both an incapable leader and Jedi. Now where this doesn't deter Caleb from seeking apprenticeship under Depa herself, it does drive him to bring the issue to her attention directly and essentially asking her if she is indeed damaged goods. Now this in particular is another important moment for the 2 in that because Caleb is so straightforward with his thoughts and questions, Depa respects this as it complements her straightforward nature as well. However, before the 2 can engage in any further discussion regarding Depa's view of herself by way of her past experiences, the Jedi Temple is set upon by Cage Warriors. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and the reason why is because this is actually the most current issue of Kanan the Last Padawan. And so until the next issue comes out next month, we actually won't know what happens next. But if you're interested in learning more about Kanan, or if you want me to do future videos on his character as his storylines progress, then leave a comment below and let me know. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.